and they look like favorites.
This is my lock of the week.
Dodgers.
No. But don't do this.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Vegas Sports Panel. Today, we're talking NCAA basketball, and specifically, who has the best chance to win it all? Okay, the futures on it. Bob, is this a good time to be talking about futures, or should we have done that a month ago or a week from now? I mean, what do you think?
It might have been better, but this is the time when I always do it, is the week between the conference championship games in football and the Super Bowl. You got a week off. You don't have to think about football. The prop bets aren't out yet. College basketball's heating up. They're been in conference play for a while. So you start looking at futures bets, because obviously we're all going to fill out our brackets. We all had our preseason picks. Once you get to the brackets, it's a different story. But this is where I start to look for like value in futures bets to win the whole thing. So a couple of examples, like some of the top teams right now, you're not going to bet them now to win the national championship. So teams like Gonzaga, if you like them in the beginning of the year, you bet them. Now is not the time when you bet them, particularly probably for the rest of the season. If you liked Gonzaga, you should have bet on the beginning of the year, because they're not going to lose in conference play. They're going to roll their conference tournament. They're going to be a 1 seed. Their odds are only going to drop.
Right.
Similar to Auburn. Auburn at the beginning of the year was like 150 to 1. They're the number 1 team in the nation right now.
Yeah.
So you don't want to bet them now, okay? Wait until they lose a couple of conference games. Maybe they get knocked out.
Close or something.
Yeah, maybe they get knocked out in their conference tournament early. So you don't want to bet them now. You don't want to bet Baylor right now, okay? Like, they were number 1 for a couple of weeks. They started to fall off. Like, wait another couple of weeks. If you like Baylor to win the national championship, wait until they lose a couple of games. Then you get some value, okay? You don't want to bet them when they're at the top of the market. Similarly, a team like Purdue in the Big Ten, they're like the second or third highest favorite. They're going to have to go through a gauntlet in the Big Ten. Like, what if they lose to Michigan State, Illinois, they lose some random game at Minnesota?
Somebody gets hurt.
Yeah, somebody gets hurt. Like, now's not the time where you want to bet Purdue, where they're at their peak and they look the best. And you're like, oh, that team could win it.
Right.
I watched them win 2 games last week. Okay, well, wait. The teams you want to bet on are the teams that are waiting in the wings, that have maybe had a slow start. They're getting into conference play. They're kind of getting hot. They won a tough game on the road. So here's some teams that I'm looking at. Okay. Kansas is in first place in the Big 12 right now. Okay. They're 12 to 1. That's not bad. And they've been without their best player for the last 3 or 4 weeks or so, Remy Martin. He's going to be coming back from a bone bruise in his knee. Kansas is 12 to 1. Decent flyer, right? Illinois was a top 10 team at the start of the year. They've had some injuries. They kind of dropped a little bit. They've had some big wins. They've had some terrible losses. They're 25 to 1. They're going to be in the tournament 25 to 1.
Wow.
I think they were like a 3 or a 4 seed last year, and they lost to Loyola.
Okay.
And they're returning most of their guys. Kentucky and the SEC's 18 to 1. I think they skyrocketed this week, so maybe don't jump on this just yet, okay? Because they were 18 to 1. This is last week's odds. They're 18 to 1, but they won like 2 big games. They're going to skyrocket. They're probably going to be ranked in the top 10. But like these are the teams we want to look at. I'm just looking at the patterns. This is what I'm trying to tell you. Like, don't take the teams at the top, at the height of where they're at right now. You don't bet on those teams to win the championship. Wait until they lose a game or 2 that you already liked, okay? Arizona, they were nowhere to be seen at the beginning of the year. They're 15 to 1 now. But they're like really streaking. That's not a very good conference. Roger, if he was here, he'd say it's Conference of Champions, but same thing. UCLA in the same conference. It's 18 to 1. The conference is wide open.
$100 get you 1,800.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean,
so that's where you start looking at like Gonzaga might win it. 4.5, 5 to 1. That's no fun.
Right.
Right. Purdue, they're like 6 to 1. That's no fun. Baylor's like 8 to 1. That's no fun. Auburn. If you would have been on Auburn at the beginning of the year, that'd be a lot of fun because you'd be looking at a lot of money and you could probably hedge it at this point. But like now, they're like 10 to 1. You don't want to get on that. So those are my like mid-range teams that might heat up, that are getting some guys back. Kansas, Illinois, Kentucky, Arizona, UCLA. Now let's look at some like next tier teams that are like way higher odds, that like all you got to do is win 5-6 games.
Right.
You might get on a heater, right?
Right, exactly.
Wisconsin, Big Ten, 40-1. They have a good basketball pedigree.
Right.
They've made some Final Fours.
Okay.
They got a good coach. 40-1. Florida State has made like the Sweet 16 like the last 3 years in a row. They're 80-1. Okay? Oregon. They made a Final Four a year or two ago. They're 80-1. Michigan State, Tom Izzo, multiple national championships. Big Ten again, 40-1. If you're going to tell me right now that Michigan State is not going to win the Big Ten championship and be like a 3 seed, don't tell me that. They could beat Illinois. They could beat Ohio State.
Remember, guys, this is all about futures.
Futures.
Okay, that's why it's like if you want to bet it as a future, a 6-1, a 10-1. That's not what you're looking for.
There's
no
value there.
Yeah, exactly. That's a different type of bet maybe you want to do on them. Or
that's what I'm saying. These teams like Wisconsin, Michigan State, Florida State, Oregon, over the course of the next 2 weeks, they win 3-4 games in a row. All of a sudden, they go from 40-1 to 15-1.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like, those are the ones you want to get a bet in on now. Like, oh, I'm going to take a flyer on Wisconsin. If they win 3 out of their next 4, all of a sudden they're going to be a top 10 team. Right. They beat Illinois and Michigan State and Michigan in the last 2 weeks. Then they jump. You know what I'm saying? So this is the time you start looking at flyers. Some deeper flyers.
I was going to say, is it really worth it to do something like one that's 250-1 or 1,000-1?
Not at this point.
I mean,
you do that at the beginning of the year.
Right,
at this point, if you're over 80-1,
you're really bad. Yeah,
and you got to really be on one. Okay, like you got to. Well, like I don't know at this point last year what Oklahoma State was. Probably at this point in the year, but then they won the Big 12 tournament.
Right.
They had the number 1 pick in the draft, Cade Cunningham. They won the Big 12 tournament. They went in as like a 3 or 4 seed, whereas they would have been like a 12 seed, barely getting in.
Right.
But so it's just where the value is. Okay. So some deeper ones, conferences that aren't big time conferences. So you got to look at the Big East. This is where I look at the Big East. You got teams like Seton Hall, UConn, Creighton. These teams are not ranked, and they're probably like 100-1 right now. But like Seton Hall and UConn have some of the best backcourts in the nation right now. Okay, they got 2 guys averaging over 15 points a game in both backcourts. You get on a little bit of a run. You know what I'm saying? Your team starts to come together, especially these younger teams. The longer the season goes, the more these guys come together. Memphis was a team I liked at the beginning of the year because they got a bunch of young freshmen. The best one of them is hurt right now. So I think they're like 40-1 right now, but you don't know if that guy's going to come back. But with young teams, the more you get into the season, they start figuring out how to play together.
Yep. They
can make a run. There's not a lot of very deep old teams. This isn't your dad's NCAA tournament where you need 3-4 seniors.
Right.
So just start looking at the futures. There's, and into winning the tournament, you got to have good guard play. You got to make your free throws. And you got to have a good head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Some good information, guys. Do your homework. Look into maybe putting a few futures bets out there just to keep things interesting because you're going to do your weekly stuff.
Yeah, we'll check in a week or two and see if anybody moved up or down from the teams that I named.
Right. And see exactly what happened maybe to make them go from a 40-1 down to a 15-1.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they went the other way, which obviously if you bet it, you don't want to see. But all right, Bob, good information. All right, you guys make sure you're getting subscribed. We appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time.